pray for Miss Harding and her brother and the family there. Any other prayer requests that we might have missed? Brother Paul? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other prayer requests? All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for this day. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here this morning. God, I pray that you'll help the different prayer requests, Lord, that were mentioned in here. Lord, I pray that you'll help Ron, Lord, with his back, Lord, and his job situation. Lord, I pray that you'll help him at work, Lord, that you'll give him strength, God, and that you'll give his management, Lord, give them wisdom in finding an opportunity that would better fit his physical situation. Lord, I pray that you'll help the back pay situation, Lord, that will shake out, Lord, in their favor. God, I pray that you'll help them with that. Lord, I pray that you'll help Brother Mike, Lord, with his doctor's appointment here on the 10th. Lord, I pray that you'll help him, Lord, and help the family. God, I pray that you'll give the doctors wisdom there with that. Lord, I pray that you'll help Brother Charles, his brother. Lord, I pray that you'll help him with the cancer that he's dealing with. Lord, I pray that you'll help his family there. Lord, I pray that you'll help Brother Paul's sister. Lord, that you'll give the doctors wisdom, Lord, as they kind of find out what's going on, Lord, and the extent of everything. God, I pray that you'll help them, give them wisdom, Lord, and help their family there. Lord, I pray that you'll help the different other prayer requests that were mentioned, Lord, Brother Jim and Miss Donna's health, Lord, Miss Tyson's health, Lord, I pray that you'll help them. God, and the different prayer requests that maybe weren't mentioned, Lord, I think of Miss Kay mentioned Miss Harding's brother, Lord, and I'm sure that's a heavy weight on them. God, I pray that you'll help them and help Miss Harding, Lord, with that situation and process. God, I pray that you'll help any other prayer requests that we might have missed this morning. Lord, I pray that you'll give peace, Lord, and grace, Lord, and mercy, Lord, to those that have burdens on their hearts. God, I pray that you'll help us this morning. Pray that you'll give us wisdom. Lord, I pray that you'll help Brother Kaiser, Lord, as he speaks this morning. Lord, and you'll help Sunday school. God, and you'll help those that are stuck at home. Lord, I think of John and my mom, Lord, Madison. Lord, I pray that you'll help that situation clear up for them. I know that's very frustrating. God, I pray that you'll help all the rest of the stuff that's going on this morning, Lord, and anything that we might have missed. In your name, amen. All right. And then we'll go to, we're in Joshua. So we're going to go over to Joshua chapter 6. Last week, we went through Joshua chapter 5, kind of ended there at the tail end with Joshua's meeting with the Lord. Joshua meeting with the Lord there at the end of Joshua chapter 5. Of course, Joshua is a book of new leadership, a different kind of leadership, where before they were coming out of Egypt and wandering in the wilderness, Joshua is leading a group that's going into the promised land. So a different kind of leadership here that Joshua has inherited from Moses. And Joshua, of course, rises to the occasion. The Lord calls him, he answers, he commands the people answer. Just a reminder in Joshua chapter 1 that the people's commitment to him says, and they answered Joshua, saying, all that thou commandest us we will do, whithersoever thou sendest us we will go, according as we hearken unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. And then in verse 18, whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandments, and will not hearken unto thy words, in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of good courage. So that was the commitment that the children of Israel made to Joshua. And then we saw in chapter 2 the story of Rahab and the spies. Of course, that's going to come up a little bit here in chapter 6. We talked about in chapter 3 the crossing, the crossing, and then chapter 4 and chapter 5 the preparation for Jericho there. And then the last couple verses in chapter 5, verse 13, it says, "And it came to pass that Joshua was by Jericho." So then he was scouting out the area of Jericho. Of course, they were camped a little bit on the border of Jericho in Gilgal. That he lifted up his eyes, right? So he's over there by Jericho. He lifted up his eyes and looked. So Joshua was deep in thought, right? Deep in thought. He's looking down. He's thinking about what's going on, what's about to happen. And behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hands. Right now, that's a scary picture. There, you're thinking, you're deep in thought, right? You're about to go into a battle, and you look up, and you see a man that's standing against you. So he's facing him with his sword drawn in his hand. Now, we know that this is a man of valor, right? A man of strength, a guy that's prepared for battle, right? And Joshua responds in turn, right? It says, stood against him with the sword in his hand. Joshua went unto him and said unto him, "Art thou for us or for our adversaries?" Right? So he wanted to know whose side he was on. Whose side he was on. Are you on our side or are you on their side? And this mysterious person, verse 14, he said, "Nay, but as the captain of the host of the Lord am I now come." Right? He said, "I'm not on your side and I'm not on their side. I'm on my own side." Right? Of course, we know this is the Lord speaking here. He says that as the captain of the Lord, or the captain of the host of the Lord, am I now come, right? So he's saying that I am the captain of the host of the Lord, right? Now, the children of Israel were supposed to be part of that army, right? The Lord's army, right? A physical people. He says that I'm in charge of the Lord's people, right? So Joshua needed a reminder, right, that it's not my side or their side, but it's the Lord's side, right? It's the Lord's side. He needed a reminder on whose side Joshua was on, not whose side other people are on, right? We're not about being on our side or someone else's side. We're about being on the Lord's side. And sometimes we need that reminder ourselves. We're so self-centered, right? We're so consumed with everything that we have going on that we forget whose side we're supposed to be on, right? And it's not about, Republican or Democrat or either side or whichever way you slice it, right? It's about being on the Lord's side and who's not on the Lord's side, right? If we were to draw the line between Republican and Democrat, there would be a lot of people on the Republican side that would be reprehensible to the Lord, right? So I don't want to be on the Republican side or the Democrat side necessarily, right? I want to be on the Lord's side. Ultimately, the only people that fit into our category, right, because we get upset when we see Republicans go astray to what we would believe as, conservative people, right? And the reality is that's not where the line is drawn, right? The line's not drawn there. The line is drawn between the Lord and those who are not with the Lord. Okay, and sometimes we need that reminder. We need to remember in the heat of what we have going on that it's about being on the Lord's side, not on my side. Joshua was about to face a pretty big battle. We talked about the substantial size of Jericho and the size of the city and the size of the walls, right? It's a fortress, and he's in charge of the people taking over this city, and he's consumed with this battle that he's about to face. That even for a moment, right? And we've seen throughout the book that Joshua is consistently following the letter, right, that the Lord's giving him, the letter of the law here, right? God gives him direction, and he follows it exactly as laid out. Okay, so Joshua isn't a man who is obsessed with himself, right? He's a good man. He's obsessed with doing what the Lord wants him to do. But for a moment, right, in a brief moment in time, we see that Joshua forgets whose side he's on, right? And God has to remind him, hey, I'm not on your side or their side. I'm on my side, right? And I want to be, and this is ultimately where it comes down to, right, that oftentimes we're wrong, right? We're wrong more often than we would like to admit. But the Lord is never wrong, right? He's never on the wrong side of the issue. Sometimes I find myself on the wrong side of the issue, but the Lord isn't. I would much rather I would have a better track record of being right if I was on God's side than as if I was on my side. If the Lord was always on my side, the Lord would make mistakes, right? And we have to remember that. Don't be so consumed with what we have going on that we forget whose side we're on. It's a lot easier that way when we're trying to figure out the solution to the problem, right? Or we're trying to mull it over, and we get somewhat consumed with how to get through this struggle, this battle, this city, right? This strong city that's shut up, we find in chapter 6, that we get so consumed with that we forget, right, that it's if we just submit to the Lord, His will be done, right? So, in chapter 5 there, towards the end here, he says, are you for us or against us? He says, nay, no, but as the captain of the host of the Lord am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and did worship, and said unto him, what saith my Lord unto his servants? Right? So Joshua falls on his face. He recognizes who he's talking to, and he repents, right? Humility. And then he requests, right, or asks for clarity, right? He says, what do you want from us, right? What saith my Lord unto his servant? Okay, so Joshua recognizes his position, right? Oh, this is the Lord that I'm speaking to, and he bows himself down on his face and asks for direction. Sometimes, and even in the brief moment that we forget whose side we're on, when we realize we need to ask direction from the Lord, right? We humble ourselves, which is a natural thing to do. We humble ourselves, and we bow ourselves, and we ask for direction. And then it says, verse 15, and the captain of the Lord of the hosts said to Joshua, right? So he's prepared to receive direction. Right, I'm sure Joshua is still consumed with the battle that's coming, right? He asked Joshua asked him, what will you have me do, right? And Joshua's probably thinking it has something to do with the city that's coming before us, and the Lord responds and says, loose thy shoes from off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground, right? The Lord takes Joshua out of the circumstance that he's in, and isn't that usually how it works, right? That when we need a help from the Lord, right, or we're consumed with a problem, that the Lord reminds us of where we are, who we're following, right, and that's Him. And sometimes, right, He continues to allow this issue to be an issue, and He pulls us out of it, right? What the Lord tells Joshua to do is He pulls him out of the issue, and He brings him into worship, right? He brings him into worship. He says, loosen the shoes off thy foot, right? He encourages him to worship the Lord, right? And recognize the sanctity of the circumstance that he's in, right? Sometimes when we're consumed with our issue, right, we come into church and we forget who God is, right? And maybe through the preaching, or through the singing, or wherever it is, the Lord reminds us. We recognize that we ask for direction. God says, no, we're not. Okay, here's some direction. Worship me, right? Worship me. And Joshua's thinking, give me direction on how to take this city, right? Because he's speaking to the captain of the hosts of the Lord, right? So if anybody knew how to take the city, it would be the captain of the hosts of the Lord, right? But the Lord didn't give him that solution. The Lord told him to loose loosen his shoes from off his feet, right? He asked him to worship him, Sometimes God wants us to put aside our problem that consumes us and be consumed with him, right? And be consumed with him. Sometimes when we have issues and we allow that issue to mull over and mull over and mull over in our mind and take up a lot of headspace, so to speak, and consume us, the Lord says, no, you're going to take your mind off of that now, and you're going to think about me, right? And you're going to think about me. And so that's what he did here with Joshua. He says, loosen thy shoes, off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. And Joshua did so, right? He became consumed, right, with the Lord. Also, I think it's interesting, they're in enemy territory. They're over by Jericho, and Joshua's taking his shoes off, right, in enemy territory. That's trust, that's faith. Belief that somebody who's in control is there. And then we get into chapter 6. In chapter 6, after he loosens his shoes off his feet, right? After he loosens his shoes off his feet, he becomes consumed with the Lord, focused on the Lord and who he is, right? And by the way, this can't be manufactured, right? When the Lord shows up, he shows up. It's hard to explain, but if you've never had a moment where you felt the Lord speak to you, then you are missing out. You're missing out. There should be times in your life, similar to Joshua, where the Lord just speaks to you. And you say, well, how do I know it? Well, you just know. Okay, you just know. It's like a still small voice in your heart. I've heard many people try to explain it, but they really can't. I've heard it said many times by many different people, and it's true. The best thing that a Christian can do is learn how to hear the voice of God in their heart and follow it. When you're saved, you have the Lord living inside of you. And in that, you should have times where you feel the Lord speak to you. And being able to recognize that voice makes a difference. Okay? Being able to recognize that voice makes a difference. And you should be able to go back to those times where the Lord spoke to you and say, that's what that's like. That's what that's like, right? And when the Lord shows up, you know it. When the Lord shows up, you know it. In order for the Lord to show up in your life, right, you have to prepare a place for him, right? Joshua had continually proven, right, and kept his life sanctified, separated, dedicated to the service of Moses, who served the Lord, and then eventually dedicated to serve the Lord. And he had a proper grounds, right, for the Lord to show up to him. So we need to make sure that in our lives, we allow the Lord a place, right, in our hearts, right, and also in our lives, that we're not consumed with junk, right, so that way we prepare the ground for him to be able to speak to us on. When you do that, when you push everything else out and you give God a blank canvas, you'll see him speak, okay, or you'll hear him speak in your heart and in your life. And when that happens, there's nothing like it. Joshua had one of those moments, right, and he had to forget about his problem first and be consumed with the Lord, and then afterwards, in chapter 6, we see that the Lord answered or gave him a solution to his problem. Okay, a solution to his problem. If it wasn't for chapter 5 and verse 13 to 15, maybe chapter 6 wouldn't have made any sense to Joshua. Okay, because chapter 6, it gets real unorthodox, right? We have a solution for a battle that has never happened before and will never happen again, right? So we see in chapter 6, verse 1, it says, Now Jericho was straitly shut up because the children of Israel, none went out and none came in. Okay, none went out and none came in. Jericho, of course, was a walled city. We know that they shut the gates, they closed down the city because the spies were there. And since then, they have been closed down for business. Okay, they aren't letting anybody in, and they're not letting anybody out. Okay, it's kind of like the old Willy Wonka movie, right, where the guy's there. Apparently, nobody's watched that movie, so I was asking my family about it. But the creepy guy with the with the cleaver, nobody ever comes in, nobody ever goes out. Just like that, right? It's years and years, right? But in Jericho, right, they shut down the city. Nobody's going in, and nobody's coming out. Okay, they are shut down. Seemingly impossible, right? The walls are heavy. There's no infiltration that can happen. There's no Trojan horse or anything like that. They are on lockdown mode. Okay, nobody's getting in there. So Joshua was recognizing that. He saw no weaknesses in their defenses, right? In verse 2, it says, "And the Lord said unto Joshua," right? So after the Lord meets with Joshua, after Joshua recognizes who he's meeting with, humbles himself, and asks for direction, and then after the Lord reminds Joshua, right, that worship comes first, right, loosing the shoes off thy feet, and being consumed with the Lord, then the Lord answers the problem that Joshua had, right? And the answer wasn't what Joshua was expecting, right? But it says, "And the Lord said unto Joshua, See, okay, see, I have given into thine hand Jericho." Okay, I think it's interesting here that they're standing outside of a city, a large city with high walls, thick walls, that's completely shut up, and he says, "See, I've given you the city." Okay, the Lord is speaking to Joshua, and he's speaking in the present tense on something that's going to be future tense. What's he saying there? He's saying that that he wants you to see, right, and recognize that the city's already yours. Okay, although was the city theirs? No, right? But it was as good as theirs. It might as well have been theirs, because the Lord was with them. "See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor." So the men of valor of the city, the king and the city, they're yours. They're yours. Now, he hasn't given it to them, right? This is a future tense, but he speaks it in a present tense. Because when God says something, it's for sure. It's for sure. "See, I have given into thine hand Jericho." Verse 3, it says, "And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days." So the Lord gives direction. He says, you're going to take the men of the armed men, the men of valor, and you're going to compass the city, the men of war. You're going to compass the city. That means to encircle it. You're going to walk around the city once, right? And this thou shalt do 6 days. So once every day. I want you to recognize the details that the Lord gives there. In verse 4, it says, "7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and 7 days. And on the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priest shall blow with the trumpets. And the priest shall blow with the trumpets, and it shall come to pass that when they made a long blast with the ram's horn, when ye hear the sound of the trumpets, or the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him." Okay, so we see that the city, we see the position, right, of the city. Jericho, right, is shut up, right, and their walls are high. And Joshua was given direction from the Lord to compass the city with the men of war, and these 7 priests, right, and the ark, right. Now there's 4 priests that would carry the ark. The ark was made from a heavy, heavy wood, so it was suggested that there would be 8 or 12 men that would be used to rotate in carrying the ark, right? And this would be a family of people. They had responsibilities by family to carry the ark. So you saw the men of war, of course, were involved, right? These are the physical warriors. And then you see the Ark of God, right, which, of course, is a picture of the presence of God. And then you have 7 priests with 7 trumpets of ram's horns. I don't know if you've ever heard a ram's horn played. Brother Paul has stories of ram's horns being played. They are not very pretty instruments, right? And they don't sound very good. If you've ever heard it, they don't sound very good. But they were to be played while they were walking around the city. Okay, 7 priests with 7 horns standing before the ark of God, right? This is the direction of the Lord. And they're to play as they compass the city, right? One time each day for 6 days. And on the seventh day, they're supposed to walk around the city. And then when the long or the loud blast goes, then the men of war are supposed to yell at the top of their lungs at the end of the seventh trip, right? So that's the Lord's direction here. Pretty general in comparison to what Joshua was about to tell the people. Joshua gets very specific. Sometimes, sometimes the Lord gives us direction, and we need to flush it out, right? Joshua really gets down, and when you read his directions, he gets real down into the weeds here with the people. That's good leadership. That's good leadership. And Joshua says, and also, was it appropriate for the children of Israel to do what Joshua told them to do, even though the Lord had very general directions for them, right? Sometimes, well, that's a whole other thing. We'll get into that here in a minute. But the long blast, right, and it says in verse 6, and Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said unto them, take up the ark of the covenant. Let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets, ram's horns, before the ark of the Lord, right? So get this picture in your head, okay, this band that they're about to have, this group of people that are about to compass the city, right? You have the ark of God, 4 priests carrying, 7 men, 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns in front of them. And he said unto the people, pass on and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord. Okay, so you have the ark of God, right, the 4 priests that carry it. And then you have the 7 trumpets, right, the 7 priests with the 7 trumpets before the ark. And then you have the men who are armed ahead of the ark, walking before the ark. Verse 8, it says, and it came to pass when Joshua had spoken unto the people that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before the Lord and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the rear reward came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing after the trumpets. Okay, so get this picture, right? Now, a rear reward would be like your reserves, okay? So after the battle happened, those people that were going to back up the people who were on the front lines, okay, that's what a rear reward was. Or it was people that were covering the back of the band there. So get this picture. You have the ark, right, and the 4 men, the 4 priests that carried the ark. You have the 7 priests blowing the ram's horns. You have the men of valor, right, the men of war in front. And then you have the rear ward, right, the men in the back, right? The Lord is in the middle, okay? The Lord is in the middle, okay? There was no direction from the Lord to Joshua on how to set up this band except for the priests and the priest's order, right? The praise came before the Lord, right? And then the presence came after the praise, okay? But Joshua, just like in Jordan, right, wanted the Lord in the middle, right? In the middle of the whole thing, he wanted God in the center, okay? Joshua wanted the Lord in the middle of what was going on, right? The Lord in the presence of God is a picture of the ark, was right in the middle of everything, okay? We see a picture, a pattern in Joshua's life where he wants the Lord to be right in the middle. In our lives, regardless of what we have going on, especially if there's a significant circumstance, right, the place for the Lord is always right in the middle. Always right in the middle, okay? We should always have the Lord right in the middle. Also, we recognize that the praise, and I already mentioned it, but the praise, right, the trumpets that are blowing to announce the entrance, right, in the similar to a king, right, would be announced by trumpets or a herald, right? Here comes the king. Okay, the priests or the praise came before the presence. God was very clear. I want the priests in front of the ark. So imagine being a man of Jericho, right, who's up on the walls, right? You're manning your station on these high walls in the city. Your faith and trust is in the ability of these walls to stand firm, right? And they've just watched the children of Israel. We saw a couple weeks ago, we had the map up, and you could see, right, from Jericho, you watch the waters back up, and this group of people crossing, right? Now they're terrified at this point. They were already terrified before they crossed. Imagine how terrified they would have been after they crossed. Imagine how terrified they would have been when they camped right next to their border in Gilgal, right? So Jericho knows what's coming. So they shut down the borders, right? They shut down the gates. Nobody's in, nobody's out. Their faith and trust is in the soundness of their walls. And now they see the children of Israel, and they're lining up this band, this group of people, with the armed men in front, okay, trumpets blowing behind them, and the ark of God, right, a picture of the presence of God, who they feared greatly, right, who they've had defectors to, following up in the middle, right, and then of course we see the rear reward in the back, right, where following up behind. Imagine being an officer of Jericho on the walls, watching these people circle the walls, right? The first day would probably be pretty terrifying, right? What are we about to see, right? And of course, they would have been stationed on certain portions of the wall, so they would have watched them go and probably heard the trumpets all the way around, right? And then they go back to their camp, right? And then the next day they come back. Same deal, okay? The third day goes by, same deal. Right? I'm sure they would have lost a little bit of fear as they were going through the days, right? Maybe some confusion set in. What are they doing, right? What are they doing? They were probably on high alert on the first day, but by the sixth day, they probably were a little bit more lax, right? A little bit more lax. In verse 9, it says, "And the armed men went before the priests and blew with the trumpets, and the rear ward came after the ark, and the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua commanded the people." Right, now remember what the commandment of the Lord was, right? Remember what the commandment of the Lord was, okay? It was just that that the priests line up, right? And that they were to compass the city. Now Joshua says, and Joshua had commanded the people, saying, "Ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then shall ye shout." So the ark of the Lord compassed the city, going about once, and they came into the camp and lodged at the camp. And Joshua rose up early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. And the 7 priests, bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord, went on continually and blew with the trumpets. And the armed men went before them, but the rear reward came after the ark of the Lord, and the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And the second day they compassed the city once and returned to the camp. So did they 6 days. Right, so Joshua gives direction to the children of Israel. It's progressive instruction. Okay? They get up, they say, okay, not a word, right? Not a sound. Now, the Lord didn't tell them to keep quiet. This is Joshua's addition here. To keep quiet, not a sound, right? And to go on. They come back to the city, and they camp there. And he gets up the next day, and he tells them to do the same thing. So imagine being a children of, or one of the mighty men, right, going before the Lord, and your leader is telling you each day, okay, so this is the day, right? This is the day. We're going to take the city. And, they follow the directions of Joshua. He says, no, we're going to go around once. Not a word, right? Then they go back home. And then they get up the next day, right? And Joshua says the same thing. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. The trumpets are going to blow, and you're just going to walk. So this is progressive instruction, okay? What do I mean? I mean, they didn't know that one time for 6 days, and then the 7th day 7 times. What they knew is what Joshua told them that morning. Now, Joshua knew, because the Lord showed him what he was supposed to do, right? Sometimes, and that's wisdom on Joshua's part, right? Because the instructions didn't make much sense. It was all by faith, right? They were following the Lord, and they were following the instructions of the Lord. They were following the Lord, and in that progressive instruction, right, the children of Israel got up and they followed him that day. They got up and they followed him again that day, right? And the instructions that he gave, he says, don't say a word. The Lord didn't tell them, right, to not speak or to not shout or not to make any noise. He didn't give that instruction. Joshua added that instruction. Okay, Joshua added that instruction. He also made the executive decision, Joshua did, to roll out that information as they went. Right? That's wisdom on Joshua's part as a leader. As a leader. Sometimes we get upset because we are given instruction, right, that might be a little bit more flushed out than what we would like, right? But it wasn't the children of Israel's job to make sure that Joshua was telling them everything that the Lord said. It was the children of Israel's job to follow the person that God had in their lives to lead them. Okay, we have a responsibility as Christians to follow those that are in authority, that is in line, right, with the instructions of the Lord. Okay, that are in line. Joshua didn't tell them to do anything that was outside of God's command, right? That was outside of God's command. He didn't give him instruction that was outside of God's command. He flushed out God's command, right? Keep it quiet for 6 days, right? So he gives progressive information. On the second day, they did the same thing, and it came to pass on the seventh day that they rose up early about the dawning of the day. And by the way, he says that don't shout until I tell you to, right? Don't shout till I tell you to. Joshua knew that the only time they were going to shout was the seventh day. But he told them on the first day, don't shout till I give you the signal. And then on the second day, same thing. On the third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, don't shout until I give you the signal. It says in verse 16, it came to pass that on the seventh time, when the priests blew the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, shout. Right? Joshua said to the people, shout on the seventh time. For the Lord hath given you the city. Of course, we know the people shout, and then the city shall be accursed. Right? So Joshua gives extra instruction. We don't see this, by the way, from the Lord's command. This is Joshua, right? The city will be accursed, even it and all that are therein, to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she had hid the messenger that we sent. And ye, in any wise, keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest ye make yourselves accursed, when ye take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel accursed, and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted, and the priest blew. When the priest blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the walls fell down flat. Now, geologists, right, have gone through and revisited the city, and you can look it up, but they found that the walls fell outward, right, not inward. It wasn't from a battering ram pushing the walls in, right? They fell outward. They fell outward. So they shouted, right? And the people shouted with a great shout, and the walls fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. There was still work to be done. Just because the cities fall doesn't mean that that's where it ends, right? They still had the battle to face. Just because they found entry, they still had to take the city. Just sometimes we forget, and we expect God to solve all of our problems, right? And He does. He solves the problem. He knocks the walls down, but we still have a responsibility to take the city. We have to follow through. That's how the Lord works. You'll find it everywhere throughout Scripture. He doesn't just solve the problem and then everything's hunky-dory and good to go, right? We have a responsibility to follow through. When the Lord answers a prayer, solves a problem, we need to follow through with that solution, okay? And that's He gave them the solution to the city, right, which was the walls falling down flat supernaturally. now they had to go and do the work, right? The mighty men of valor were walking around, but they had a responsibility to take the city after the walls fell. We'll continue on with this next week, and then we'll jump into chapter 7 for a little bit. But Lord, thank you for this day. Lord, thank you for all that you do for us. Lord, I pray that you'll give us wisdom. Lord, help us to be like Joshua, Lord, and keep you in the middle of everything. God, I pray that you'll help us to be like the children of Israel, Lord, and follow, in this instance, and follow the person that you have in our lives, Lord, to lead us. God, I pray that you'll help us to know your word, Lord, and follow its commandments. God, and there's nothing wrong with making things clear, Lord, and having good discernment and understanding, Lord, of your commands. God, Joshua did, and Lord, and he used that, and he was wise about it. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to be the same. Lord, we thank you for all that you do for us. Lord, in your name, amen.